לאבותינו ולנו, שלא אחד בלבד עמד עלינו לכלותנו, עמד עלינו לכלותנו, והיא שעמדה לאבותינו, והיא שעמדה לאבותינו ולנו, שלא אחד בלבד עמד עלינו לכלותנו, עמד עלינו לכלותנו. והקדוש ברוך הוא מצילנו, מצילנו מידם. והקדוש ברוך הוא מצילנו, מצילנו מידם. והיא שעמדה לאבותינו, והיא שעמדה לאבותינו ולנו, שלא אחד בלבד עמד עלינו לכלותנו, עמד עלינו לכלותנו.
הקדוש ברוך הוא מצילנו, מצילנו מידם.
שלא אחד בלבד עמד עלינו לכלותנו, לכלותנו. והקדוש ברוך הוא מצילנו, הקדוש ברוך הוא מצילנו מידם, מידם.
הקדוש ברוך הוא מצילנו, מצילנו מידם. והקדוש ברוך הוא מצילנו, מצילנו מידם. והקדוש ברוך הוא מצילנו, מצילנו מידם. והקדוש ברוך הוא מצילנו, מצילנו מידם. והיא שעמדה
Ja, herzlich willkommen zu
A big and warm welcome here to the memorial event on occasion of the 8th of November 1938, and of course what is up to date, the attack by Hamas on Israel on the 7th of October with the 1,400 victims. If there's ever been a time, never again is now, then now is the time to do that. And we are also very happy to have many people here with us in the hall here in Tübingen. Welcome to all of you. And we've got also a lot of visitors here with us via YouTube. Great to have you with us as well. So this event today is streamed in 7 different languages, and that is very special. So we can be global in this. We can have a global reach. And the song we heard just now has special significance also. It's called Vehi She'amda, and it is a prayer from the Passover Haggadah.
Gebet ist so
And this prayer is so fitting for today. It is not just one enemy who has risen against us to destroy us, but in every generation they arise to destroy us. But the Holy One, blessed be his name, delivers us from their hands. I think there are no words that could be more fitting for this time. And we are so glad that we can have this evening here together. We will hear victims and witnesses of the massacre of the 7th October. We'll have experts with us and also descendants of Holocaust survivors and also descendants of Nazi perpetrators. But we've got a special guest of honor with us today, and I'm really happy to be able to announce her, Tirza Halivni. She's with us here from Israel, and we are so glad to have you with us. Thank you and welcome. So please give a big warm hand to our guest of honor, Tirza Halivni.
Wir werden gleich mit Tirza sprechen.
And we will be speaking to Tirza in a moment about her experiences. But here I would like to welcome our International March of Life directors and coordinators. Maybe we can show them here on the screen. And they represent and show that the statement "Never Again is Now" is not just in theory, but it is a worldwide call. So here you can see Rosalie Jerome. She's our National Director of Texas. And in the uniform, we have Igal Even-Ziv with his wife Martine. He's the Israeli Director of March of the Nations in Israel. We're closely connected to him. And then we have Ben Hardiman from Australia, Melbourne. He and his wife are in the process of establishing March of Life in Australia. And we've got Ralf Steinmetz, Marcha de la Vida in Argentina. They had a big march in Buenos Aires on Sunday with a very positive echo. Then we have Ruth Curra, Director of Marcha de la Vida in Paraguay, Asunción. That's where she's based. And then we've got Andrea Shimoni. She's the Director of March of Life Hungarian. So she's translating into Hungarian. That's why she's talking right now. But next on the screen is Michael Roux, Director of March of Life for Israel in Switzerland. Marche de Vie pour Israel in the French-speaking part of Switzerland. And they've just had a big project there. Now there's Dorothy Haas. She's director in Germany. And Mike and Lynn McNally. They represent March of Life in the UK. And they are in Belfast, Northern Ireland. And then we have in the third row, we've got Pirjo Katunen. She is director of March of Life in Finland. And then we have Ruben Gutknecht in Lima, Peru. He is director of March of Life in all of South America. And we will hear from him afterwards. And then we have Edward Zwierz. He's director of Marzycja in Poland. He's based in Kielce. And it's so good to have Andrei Mishenko with us. He's director of March of Life in the Ukraine. Andrei, it's so good to have you with us, that you had the opportunity. And we've got Magali Rodriguez. She's director of March of Life in Argentina, Jujuy. She's very active. And then we've got Raisa Mpundu. She is releasing March of Life in Burundi in Africa. Raisa, it's so great to have you. And then we've got Thomas Hanselmann and his wife Lucia. They are holding Marches of Life in La Paz in Bolivia. And we've got Richard Pité. He is director of March of Life in Geneva. And then we've got Kari with us as well. Unfortunately, he just left. But Kari, it's so good to have you with us. Also in Finland. And they represent the fact that we will raise our voices all over the world. So thank you. That was the screen of all our directors. We'll talk to some of them later on, and we'll hear about the activities in their nations. But now, Jobst, I would like to invite you to come forward. Jobst Bittner is president and founder of March of Life. So Jobst, maybe you can give us an introduction here. Well, thank you so much, Heinz. It's a great joy to see all of these March of Life directors. And I would like to give you that introduction. And I'm glad this is translated into so many different languages. Never Again is Now. So on the night of the 9th and 10th of November 1938, exactly 85 years ago, a horrific pogrom took place in Germany, which went down in history as the Pogrom Night or Kristallnacht. We are used to commemorating this day with special events and to reminding ourselves that something like this must never happen again. But what happened in that night? The so-called Reichspogromnacht, the Kristallnacht, was the excessive climax of the November pogroms, in which 1,400 synagogues were destroyed, hundreds of homes vandalized, and the inhabitants were humiliated, injured, and robbed. The destruction, looting, and abuse of the Jewish population reached a temporary peak. So that was a terrible night. Up to 7,500 Jewish businesses were destroyed and in some cases looted. Over 30,000 Jewish men were taken hostage and sent to concentration camps after the 10th of November. During the violent attacks, 1,400 Jews were brutally murdered. And the churches, Protestants, Catholics alike, they remained silent. Indifference and silence in the face of injustice and violence, these were the depressing characteristics of the time. On the 9th of November 1938, the anti-Semitic discrimination that had been going on for years escalated into outright violence. That night was like a turning point. It was the prelude to the discrimination and persecution of the Jews and even to their very annihilation. That ended in the Holocaust. And it's more than justified to draw a connection between the 9th of November 1938 and the 7th of October 2023. And we will not do justice to the victims of Kristallnacht today unless we also talk about the terrible atrocities committed by Hamas today. In the early morning of the 7th of October, Israel was attacked by Hamas. Thousands of rockets fell on Israel. Terrorists invaded Israel from Gaza, raped women, brutally murdered old and young, beheaded babies. Entire families were massacred and their bodies mutilated. 240 civilians, including more than 30 children and young people, were kidnapped by Hamas and taken as hostages to Gaza. The terror on the 7th of October is unprecedented in its barbarity. More Jews were killed in one day than ever before since the Holocaust. It was a Hamas pogrom against 1,400 innocent people. No one can fathom the agony and suffering of the 240 hostages who've been subject to the hatred and terror of their tormentors to this day, which has already been 30 days. Dear friends, over the past 3 weeks, we've witnessed a worldwide anti-Semitic eruption, the likes of which have never been seen before. Millions of people gathered in most of the world's capitals under Palestinian flags, and they chanted "Free Palestine" or "Proclaim a Free Palestine from the river to the sea." Now these are slogans, dear friends, that have long since become a call for Israel's total annihilation. And I ask myself, how is it that so many people in the Western world have become so anti-Semitic that the slaughter of Jewish families, the beheading of Jewish babies, and the dismemberment of corpses have hardly aroused any sense of injustice in them? How can it be that the elite universities of the USA are calling for hatred and the murder of Jews? After the anti-Jewish attacks in Dagestan in the North Caucasus, Russia has become dangerous for Jews. In Germany, synagogues are being attacked again, and Jewish lives are threatened. On the days commemorating the 9th of November, protection against Jewish institutions is increased. Jews are once again living in constant fear of attacks. And this is almost 80 years after the Holocaust. Indifference and silence have been the clear hallmarks of anti-Semitism and hatred of Jews for more than 2,000 years. The reality is that after almost 80 years, we are more deeply entrenched in anti-Semitism than ever before. And I ask myself, what has gone wrong in our country? Have all the instruments of working through the past failed? What about our memorials, museums, and educational support? What about literature, the countless documentaries and films? What about our days of remembrance? And what about all our attempts to keep the memory of the Holocaust alive? How much anti-Semitism and hatred of Jews must lie dormant in a person to be so indifferent and downplay a massacre of 1,400 Jews and look past it without any empathy whatsoever? The social scientist and commissioner for anti-Semitism of the state of Berlin, Samuel Salzborn, would not be surprised. In his book, Collective Innocence, he pointed out years ago that anti-Semitism would once again become a bloody reality in German memory as a result of the refusal to remember the Shoah. The refusal to remember in our families The refusal to remember in our families led to a refusal to recognize that, depending on age, one's own father, mother, grandfather, grandmother, great-grandfather, or great-grandmother were guilty. Today, we are experiencing the dramatic consequences of a refusal to remember, which has caused the facts about the active or passive involvement of our own parents and grandparents in Nazi crimes to disappear, and the perpetrators to be transformed into victims. And I wonder, why do we as churches and communities find it so difficult to seize the opportunity to put a definite stop to anti-Semitism and hatred of Jews for future generations? Anti-Semitic thinking is an insidious poison that is passed on from generation to generation until there is an active rethink through turning back and repentance. The stories of thousands of participants who've taken part in Breaking the Veil of Silence seminars show that this is possible. If we really want to take up the fight against anti-Semitism and hatred of Jews in Germany and in the nations, we have to begin with ourselves and in our own families. That's not just true for Germany, but it's true for every single nation. The fight against anti-Semitism and hatred of Jews is part of the Germany family raison d'être. And I would like to share a story in closing. It's a story by Annette Kahane. She's a journalist and author. Her parents were secular Jews and fled Germany to escape the National Socialist regime. She's also chair of the board of the Amadeus Antonio Foundation, which publishes a new report every year on the state of anti-Semitism. And I am so moved by what she writes personally. Let me read a few lines here. The first few days, that's what she wrote, after the Hamas attack on Israel, I felt like I was a single gaping wound. And this feeling was with me in every mundane move of my everyday life. Sometimes the pain was almost unbearable, especially when my granddaughter played with me on the windowsill. For the first 3 days after the murders in Israel, I was barely able to look at her without crying. Not out loud, but inwardly. My little sweetie, I couldn't bear it if anything happened to you, and not just anything, but this. Anti-Semitism, she continues, is rampant on the streets once again, and many Jews and feel lost despite the political statements wherever they are heard. The pain does not subside. My grandchild's round cheeks have these dimples when she laughs. I can't imagine the panic this little girl would feel if she were tortured. Many Jewish parents and grandparents have to think of exactly that. They have to endure it. So we all have to imagine this. And we have to stand by them. Dear friends, the terror of the 8th of November 1938 was only the beginning. It was the prelude to the extermination of the Jews. And the same applies to the 7th of October 2023. Regardless of whether Israel succeeds in driving Hamas out of Gaza, the terrible massacre on the 7th of October marks a new era. Dear friends, we know that a never again slogan is no longer enough today. The commemoration of the Kristallnacht is becoming an urgent call these days. Never again is not enough. Raise your voices against anti-Semitism and hatred of Jews. Do not wait. Be active. Do it now. Never again is now. Thank you very much.
So, vielen Dank, Job.
So thank you so much, Job Spittner. And now we want to connect to Israel now, and we will talk to Tirza Halivni, and I would like to present her briefly. Tirza Halivni was born in Geilingen on the border between Germany and Switzerland in 1934. Her father was a rabbi in Geiling until he was murdered in the camp of Dachau. Tirza can remember those events very well, and her mother was able to flee Germany with the children. And today, Tirza lives in Ramat HaSharon in Israel. And Tirza, we are so glad to have you here live with us in this event. First of all, can you hear me? Thank you very much. I hear you very well.
Begrüßt Sie mal herzlich mit einem Applaus.
So please welcome her with a warm hand of applause. We are so glad to have you with us.
Und Tirza, meine erste Frage ist, können Sie uns...
And Tirza, my first question, could you share with us what you experienced on this 9th of November 1938, 85 years ago, and how you survived?
Jetzt bin ich 89.
Well, now I'm 89 years old,
85.
and it was 85 years ago. I was only 4 years old at the time. It wasn't actually the 9th of November, but in the very early hours of the morning of the 10th, 3 or 4 in the morning, I suddenly heard loud banging at our doors. And I was the youngest of 7 children, and I'm the only one still alive.
The Holocaust.
And it is my goal to share about the Holocaust in all the world, especially in Germany in schools. And I'm also very busy here in Israel to speak about this. And so this is my life goal today. And I want to tell you that whenever I hold presentations in German or in Israel here in Hebrew, I do that. But now on the 7th of October, when it happened, this terrible disaster in Israel, all of a sudden, I felt like I was 4 years again, and everything came flooding back. And I can't even tell you how terrible this was.
Tatsache.
And the fact is, people don't forget, and others might not forget, you know. I was only 4 years old at the time, but I remember exactly how my father was almost beaten to death. And then they took all the men and deported them to Dachau. Dachau at that time was the big concentration camp.
Die Mama ist geblieben.
And my mother stayed back with 7 small children. And then mother and our 7 children and all of the women and their children were driven out of their homes. And the secret police just threw us out on the street. I remember that so well. All day we spent in a sports hall, and I have to tell you, Today, you know, I'm 89 years old. I think, how is that possible? Nobody believes me, but I remember exactly, even so many years later. And later, I helped teach a group in Germany, in Geilingen. And this group wanted to get the house from the government in Geilingen, and I explained to them, you know, what happened in this huge house. I still remembered all the rooms in that house, who lived where, and nobody can understand how I remember, but I do.
Tirza, vielen Dank dafür, dass du uns
Wow, Tirza, thank you so much for sharing this with us, sharing about the day. You say it wasn't the 9th of November, but the early morning hours of the 10th, when the secret police came and just knocked you out of bed.
80 Jahre später noch.
And now, 85 years later, you mentioned before, the 7th of October happened. Again, another pogrom.
Ich weiß auch, wo du wohnst.
And I also know where you live. You have rocket attacks. The Hamas is shooting at you. You have to run to your shelters. Maybe you can tell us today, what does that mean for you as a Holocaust survivor to have to go through this? Well, to be really honest, I live here, and the presentations I hold, I don't mind. But what happened then on the 7th of October, you know, it's so suddenly. And every year I had to remember what I had to go through as a child, and I can hardly believe that it happened again. Because the 7th of October, on that Saturday morning, it happened again. And I can only tell you, I am desperate, you know, I'm so restless. Our heart is literally hurting. You know, I am really busy with lots of things. TV are asking me, newspapers are asking me. And there was an old woman who was abducted to Gaza. And so she was also reported on in TV and newspaper. And now I tell you, 85 years ago, and she is not with us, and I can be here today, 85 years later. That is really strange and weird for me, but I want to say thank you to you that I can be here with you.
Tirza, wir bedanken uns bei dir, dass du dir
Well, Tirza, we say thank you to you that you take this time to also share these things with you, and that you are so courageous and bold to speak about it, also the great pain you're going through. And you know, we've got people from literally all over the world with us. We are streaming in 9 different languages. And these people who are watching now, they are active in the nations against anti-Semitism and for Israel. What do you want to tell these people? What is the message that they need to hear today, and what's the message they need to share? Well, I don't understand, how is it possible to hate so much? I don't hate anyone. I tell you, everybody needs to know that we've got a wonderful country. We are decent people, hardworking. For 75 years, we had a beautiful land that we set up and built. Everything is modern. And I want everyone to know that this hatred and this Hamas, these are people that I cannot understand. And I've seen the images, and I know people who in those kibbutzim, I knew them. I don't understand what happened. And I want everyone to know this, something like this must not happen. And I don't understand how it's possible, how this could happen.
Ja, das ist eine Frage, die
Well, this really is a question that rings out loudly, and also you as a witness of the time, you were an eyewitness of 1938, but also an eyewitness of today's program. We need to hear that. We must not forget. Tirza, thank you so much for taking that time and sharing with us. And we want to play a song right now. And that song is a verse from the prophet Isaiah, chapter 40. Comfort, comfort my people, is what your God says. And this is a call and a prayer, but it's also our charge. And we want to play this song for you, Tirza, and we want to hear this song for the people in Israel, but also for the Jewish communities here in Germany and all over the world.
und
who are suffering so much at this time and who are faced with anti-Semitism once again. And we want to say we will not be silent. We stand with you. Nachamu Amo.
Nachamo Army tröstet mein Volk. Nochmal vielen Dank, Tirza Halivni.
Nachamu Ami, comfort my people. Once again, Tirza Halivni, thank you so much for being with us and sharing your story here. Hearing from Holocaust survivors is so important, and as long as we can do that, we want to take every opportunity we have. But now we want to continue here, and I'm very honored to be able to welcome our next guest here. She's Natalie Sanandaji, Communications Officer of Combat Anti-Semitism. She visited the music festival on the 7th of October and she survived. So Natalie, welcome to our event here. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
So, Natalie, du hast an diesem Festival in der Nähe vom Kibbutz
you were part of the festival close to the Kibbutz Be'i when the terrible attack took place on the 7th October. What did you experience and how did you survive? Can you share a little bit of how it was for you?
Yes, so I arrived at the festival with 3 friends. We met there with about 10, 15 other kids, all Israeli. I was the only American in the group. We arrived at around 1, and me and my friends, we decided to take a rest at around 3 and wake up for the sunrise set of the festival, which was the part of the festival that everyone was waiting for and anticipating. One of the girls that we were with came and woke us up at around 6:30. She came over to alert us of the situation. She wanted to make sure that we were awake and we understood what was happening. The way she described what was happening was unlike anything else. She came to us and she said, I just want you guys to know some rockets have been intercepted overhead, but it's okay. It's normal for the area that we're in. It will probably just be a few and it'll pass and we will continue with the party. I want everyone to try to imagine a music festival happening anywhere else in the world and rockets being intercepted overhead and young kids reacting in such a calm manner. That simply wouldn't happen anywhere else. But for Israeli kids, unfortunately, this is their reality. This is something that they grew up with. This is something that they live with on a regular basis. They've been in bomb shelters countless times in their lives. So at first, nobody took the threat that seriously because they figured it would just be a few and it would pass. After a few minutes, we realized this isn't just another ordinary situation because it's not just 5, 7 rockets. It was 10, 15, 20. They kept coming. Eventually, after a few minutes, the festival security shut off the music and asked everyone to please evacuate to their cars. As we're evacuating to our cars, the festival security starts asking everyone to drive in a certain direction. We start driving, and eventually they ask everyone to please pull their cars over to the side of the dirt road and get out of their cars and start to run. At that time, we didn't understand why they would ask us to do such a thing because we still thought it was just rockets. And we figured we have the Iron Dome, which intercepts most, if not all of the rockets. And our biggest fear was scraps from the rockets that are being intercepted falling on our cars. But we listened to the security. We pulled our cars over to the side of the road. And we sat there for a few moments trying to understand why they would ask us to run. And that's when we heard the first gunshots. And that's when we understood that there are terrorists on foot just a few feet away from us. As soon as we heard the first gunshots, we opened our doors and we started to run. Kids were running in every direction. Nobody knew what direction was the direction of safety. And when a lot of people ask me, how did you survive? How did you know what choices to make? I met someone recently who's done a lot of documentaries with Holocaust survivors, and he said that a lot of the Holocaust survivors that they spoke to, when they were asked, how did you know what choices to make in order to save your life? They said that they didn't know, but what they called it was a choiceless choice. And a choiceless choice is when you just simply have to make a choice in that moment, and you have no idea of knowing which choice is the right choice, but you just have to make a choice. And that perfectly describes the choices that we made as we were being chased by the Hamas terrorists and being shot at and having rockets intercepted over our heads. We simply had to make choiceless choices. One of those choiceless choices was when we passed by a group of kids who were hiding in a ditch. And we knew one of these kids, and he told us, get in, come hide with us. And we started to get into the ditch and go down. And as we're going down into the ditch, one of my friends says, like, no, this is a bad idea. If we go in this ditch and the Hamas terrorists find us and they come from above us, we have nowhere to run. They're just going to shoot us down and kill us. So we decided to continue running while maybe 10, 15 other kids decided to stay back and hide in that ditch. And we later found out that they were shot and killed. At certain points, we were running in a certain direction, thinking that we're running to safety. And then suddenly we would see dozens of kids running in our direction. And we realized that they're being pursued, that they're being chased after by a terrorist, that they're being shot at. And then we once again have to make a choiceless choice of changing directions and making a split-second decision on what direction to turn to. And we really had no way of knowing what direction was going to be the right direction. Later, we found out that the Hamas terrorists were closing in on all of us from multiple directions. So really, there was no right direction. Eventually, after about 2 hours of walking and running, every time we wouldn't hear gunshots for a few minutes, we would slow down to catch our breath. After about 2 hours, we ran into a police officer who was alone. He didn't have much to protect us with. All he had was a handgun. And we asked him, why can't you call for backup? And he said because the terrorists had taken over the local police station and they had taken over their radio station. And if he called for backup, he would simply give up our location and then they would come for us. And as he was walking alongside us, protecting us to the best of his ability, we could hear the Hamas terrorists yelling on his walkie-talkie on the police's radio station. He told us the best advice he could give us was walk in the direction of the sun, because that direction was the town of Patish, which was one of the nearest towns to get to safety. We continued to walk in that direction for about 4 hours. Eventually, after about 4 hours, we hadn't heard gunshots in a few minutes, and we decided to sit under a tree and get some shade and catch our breath. While sitting under that tree, we suddenly see a white pickup truck driving in our direction. And it was me, my 3 friends, and maybe about 10 other kids. Our automatic reaction was, this is a terrorist coming to kill us. I remember seeing all the other kids, we all kind of simultaneously, like half got up, contemplating running. And then at the same moment, we all kind of realized we have nowhere to run to. We're in an open field. There's nowhere to hide. If this is a terrorist, he's in a car, he has a gun, we're on foot. And then we all kind of just sat down and accepted our fate. And we all looked at each other and kind of just nodded our heads. And we understood, like, this is the end. And we accepted it. But luckily for us, it wasn't a terrorist. It was a man from the town of Patish who left the safety of his home, of his town, and drove towards all this chaos, risking his own life in order to save ours. We all got into his pickup truck. He drove us to the town of Patish. And as soon as he dropped us off, I didn't even have a moment to thank him, because he turned right back around and risked his life all over again to go save more lives.
Wow, Natalie, diesen Bericht zu hören, ist sehr...
Wow, Natalie, hearing this is deeply moving and disturbing, and it is so important to hear that firsthand, to understand that this is so real. The attack of Hamas was so real, 100%. And when I heard your story, I was wondering, you work for the Combat Anti-Semitism movement, but how will your life continue after such a terrible experience? What is the message that you want to share with people?
I think that as a survivor, first of all, I feel that it's important and it's almost my duty to speak out for those who can't speak for themselves today, those who were killed in the attack, those who are still being held hostage a month later. I feel that it's important to be their voice and to share my story on their behalf. And since this attack, my life has I've taken a new role in my life, and I feel that it's important to speak out and to educate people on what's really happening, on the fact that this is a terrorist organization, that they're not only killing innocent Israelis, but innocent Palestinians as well. And to see the reaction of the world, to see the rise of anti-Semitism after this attack, it's like the world is throwing salt on our open wounds. And unfortunately, especially in America, I feel that a lot of this hate comes from the education system, and the education system is truly failing us. And I need to keep speaking out in order to maybe educate those who have been taught the wrong facts, who have been taught lies. And I hope that maybe if they hear the story from someone who is there, as opposed to just reading it in an article, that maybe they will understand better what's really happening. Maybe they will take it more seriously. Maybe they'll choose to do more research and to really learn about the situation instead of just seeing a post online and deciding to get their information from a source that isn't reliable.
Vielen Dank, Nathalie. Und wir werden
Wow, thank you so much, Natalie. And we will take your story and we will share it.
von unserer Seite alles tun, dass
And from our side, we'll do everything in our power so the truth about what happened and the truth about anti-Semitism will be heard in Europe, worldwide, wherever we are working, that it will be known. So thank you so much, Natalie. Give her a big, big warm hand. Thank you for sharing and being with us.
Thank you for having me.
Und ich möchte jetzt weitergehen zu einem weiteren.
And now I would like to continue with the next survivor of the Hamas pogrom. His name is Matti Danzig, and he's a docent of pedagogics in Beersheba at the university, and with his wife and 3 daughters between the ages of 3 and 8, he lives in near Oz, next to the Gaza Strip. And this kibbutz was almost completely destroyed, burned to the ground, and he survived the terror attack of Hamas. And his father, Alex Danziger, was abducted. And for today, Matti can't be with us live, but before this event, we spoke to him, and we have a recording of our conversation that we want to see now. Matti Danzig from the kibbutz near Oz.
We woke up to the sound of bombing alert, something that we quite used to in our kibbutz. Every once in a while there is this situation when we have to get to the shelter and there is bombing in the kibbutz, but this time it was much different. After the bombing, my father called me and he told me to look at the messages that's going on. The first message was that there are terrorists inside the kibbutz. First, I didn't know what to think. I thought it's some kind of illusion, maybe. From all the messages we got, we understood the kibbutz is full of terrorists with shooting guns and everything. So then we got messages that they are shooting and they are trying to kidnap people, and many people got disconnected, and we lost contact with them. It's the same case with my father. Last time anyone spoke with him was in 8:30 in the morning. My brother Yuval spoke to him. After that, I tried to call him and there was no response. So me and my family was there in the shelter. I was holding the handle door, and I was all the time updated of what's going on. And there are terrible messages going on that people got shot, that people are burning alive, messages that come and help us, we are dying. So you can imagine what kind of horror, and I was really, really terrified. I look at my wife and my daughters, my 3 little daughters, I look at them, and I know they are going from house to house and slaughtering people and burning people. I knew that eventually they will come to us because they are just moving from house to house. It went on like this for about 8 hours. Every minute that passed by was like eternity. It was very, very frightening. I was shaking. My body was physically shaking. Especially I was afraid about my daughters and my wife. I couldn't believe that we're going to end our life like this. But eventually we were very, very lucky. And somehow, I don't know, what kind of a miracle happened that they didn't get inside our house. We have 360 people in the kibbutz. There are only 4 or 5 houses that they didn't get into, and we are one of these houses. So yeah, we thank God we are alive. And also my mother is alive, and my sister family is alive, and my father was kidnapped to Gaza. When the army came to rescue him, he was already kidnapped. There was nobody in the shelter, nobody in the house. And after that, we came to know that his phone detected in Gaza. So we are sure that he is kidnapped. It is also confirmed by the army. My uncle also, we know he is kidnapped. My father is a very remarkable man. He done a lot for education in the fields of Holocaust in Israel and in Poland for about 20 years, 30 years. He dedicated his life for this subject. He's one of the big experts in this field in Israel, I think maybe in the world even. He was one of the first guides that took people to Poland to see concentration camps, and then he started teaching other people how to do it for many years. He also dedicated his life for making connection with the Polish and Israeli youth groups and many others. And above this, he is a great grandfather for my children and for my brothers and sisters' children. And we love him very much. We miss him very much. Just a day before it happened, Friday night, he was in our house. We were having dinner, and very interesting and fun conversation, like always, because he knows so much and because he knows how to make things very interesting. It's very pleasant to have a conversation with him, and I miss him very much. Yeah, I couldn't imagine that I will compare myself to something like the Holocaust. Like every time since this happened, like before this happened, every time I hear someone comparing Holocaust to something else, I feel very angry. But we feel we were like 8 hours in the Holocaust because we were defenseless. There was nobody that came to help us. People just came and burned us and burned friends of mine and slaughtered friends of mine like they are nothing, like their lives are not worth anything. And it's still hard for me to compare it. I think in the Holocaust, of course, they didn't have any hope that someone will rescue them. And we had, this is a big difference. We had this hope. 1 hour passed by, 2 hours passed by. We thought somebody will come. We didn't get the help we needed. These terrorists had too much time to do horrible things. In this massacre, there were not only terrorists, because we are very near the border, very near to Khan Yunis, city of Khan Yunis. We know about women, about children that just came to the kibbutz and did horrible stuff and robbed whatever they want and burned. It's just terrible. I can't compare it to the Holocaust, but it's nearly the terror, the fear and the horror that we were in was very intense. I think I will need some lifetimes to get over it. The most important thing for me is to bring back all the hostages. I want to tell the government of Israel they should do anything, I mean anything, to get them back. This should be the first priority, to bring them back. I don't think it is right now the first priority, and it will be everybody talking about winning the war. It will be we are not winning if all the hostages are not back alive. October 7th, we lost big time, and we are losing again if they are not coming back. I'm sorry to say that, but I think they don't do enough. I think that this is the first priority, and they should do anything to make it possible and bring them back. I'm asking, I'm begging the government of Germany. I know the government of Germany can have a lot of power and influence there in Arabic world, or maybe on Hamas also, just begging for them to help us in this terrible hour. We are living in a nightmare. This isn't over. Like, the trauma is still there. We are in a nightmare, and we want it to end. And these people, they are in Gaza now, are not supposed to be there. They not deserve to be there. They should be the first priority. They should be back home. This is the most important thing for me to say. Second thing, people that try to picture this terrorist, the Hamas organization, as a legitimate group, just it's unbelievable. These people made the most horrible crimes against humanity. I can't even repeat, I can describe it, but it's too difficult for me to even say the things they did that I know of. And they picture themselves doing that. So if people don't want to believe, they can just see. I don't want to see the things, these pictures and movies, videos, because it's too difficult for me. I don't want to see it. But if anyone thinks that Hamas is a legitimate group, is very, very wrong. They made the most horrible crimes against humanity that human mind can imagine.
So, das ist die Botschaft von Matti.
Wow, that was the message that Matti Danziger had for us, and I brought something here. That is the poster showing his father, Alexander Danziger, who is one of the hostages, one of 240 in Gaza right now. We heard his pain, that his father is held captive there. And we should do everything in our power also to raise our voices as well. And we also do that worldwide. With these posters, many activities, we demand the release of the hostages. Because it's so important. And as he said, if they don't come back, how can there be victory unless they come back? And we take that very seriously. Let's not stop doing that. And also remember Alexander Danzig and raise our voice for him as well. And we want to hear a song now that Markus Kalb and Stefan Klein have recorded. It's called Shuva Adonai, modeled on Psalm 126, verse 4. Lord, return our captives as you make the rivers in the south return. And that's a prayer and maybe also a comfort to say, Lord, return the captives from Gaza. We'll see it here on the screen.
ובחור בוא יבוא ורינה הלוך ילך ובחור בוא יבוא ורינה אז יאמרו בגויים הגדיל אדוני לעשות עם מלך
Ja, dieses Lied ist über YouTube erhältlich.
Well, this song is available on YouTube. Bring back our captives. That is our prayer. And I don't know what you feel like, but I am deeply moved by the stories that we've just heard.
Ich freue mich sehr, dass
And I'm very happy to be able to welcome Sharon Haskell with us. And we'll see whether it works now here via Zoom. I would like to present her to you. She's a member of Knesset. And at the same time, she's been a long-standing friend of March of Life. In 2019, she was with us in Stuttgart in the March of Life there. And she's also a co-chair of the Knesset Christian Allies Caucus that we're connected with. And now we'll see whether we can see her on the big screen. I am so glad, Sharon, to have you with us. So glad to see you. And the fact that you can be with us here in this event is really special. Sharon, how have you experienced the 7th of October? How was it for you personally?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for inviting me for this event. And thank you so much to all the people that are watching us and that are in Germany and all around the world that are in support and are true friends of our people. We don't take it for granted, definitely not during these days. And so I want to thank you personally so much. How did I experience it? Speaking about the Kristallnacht, my grandmother was in Leipzig during that time, experiencing it. My grandfather survived Auschwitz and was sent on the death march. And for me, my biggest promise to them, and they've passed away just a few years ago, was never again, never again. And watching those images of entire families being massacred, burned down alive, babies beheaded, pregnant women, their bellies cut out, and the babies out-stabbed. For me, it feels like I really failed my grandparents in telling them that our people, the Jewish people, will never be massacred like that again. That we will never experience something like that when we are helpless. The other thing is that my grandfather was always telling us that since when he was in Auschwitz and he was forced to work there, the Nazis would laugh at them and would tell them constantly that no one would believe them. No matter what happened, no one would believe the atrocities that had happened there. Everybody will know they're liars. And so they made us a promise to remember those things and to say never again. Since I was really, really young, my grandfather used to tell us those stories about Auschwitz. So I remember he had this magical way in telling us those horror stories in a way that suits children so that we remember them. And when I was just a few days after the massacre in the towns of Be'eri and Kfar Aza, and one of the IDF officers telling me that when he came in to liberate Kfar Aza, in the entrance, he saw a pile of body burning in a fire, and he didn't understand what he was seeing. He thought like something must have happened. Maybe they throw a grenade by accident and explode. Maybe there was a Molotov bottle. He didn't understand. And trust me, he's seen some horrible scenes. So he tried to make logic to it and he didn't understand. So they turned down the fire and they tried to save whatever was left from the bodies. And then he goes further in and he sees another pile of body in flames burning. And he's going quickly and he shuts it down. And he tells me that he looks into the horizon and he sees so many smoke in the distance coming up. And he realized and he understands that all of these are piles of bodies being burnt. And he starts running from pile to pile. Many soldiers with their hands, bare hands and feet, trying to take down the fire so that there'll be any kind of leftover to at least try and identify those bodies so that we can take them to a burial. And that hit me in my heart like a knife. Remembering my grandfather saying how the Nazis tried to eliminate all the evidence, burning them down. So this is how we feel. We feel the failure, but we also feel a great need to go out and win because we have to. If I try to put it in a proportion of the size of Germany in comparison to the state of Israel, try and imagine that in one day, there would be 13,000 people massacred in less than 24 hours. Try and imagine 2,220 babies and women and elderly Holocaust survivors without their medication being kept hostages in dungeons, in bunkers, underneath the ground in Gaza, where we don't know whether they have food or anything. For me personally, as a mother of twins, it's very difficult to fall asleep. I think every night of Emma and Yuli, twins who are 3 years old, in the hands of those monsters, and how they feel and what they think and what they see. And I think of Kfir, a 10-month-old baby. My babies are a year old. He's 10 months. In what conditions are they holding him? Those things don't leave my mind. It's very difficult to fall asleep. I go to my baby's bed to kiss them and hug them because I'm privileged. I'm privileged that my babies sleep at night in their bed. This attack wasn't just...
Sharon, vielen Dank. Das ist, glaube ich, dieser unermessliche Schmerz, das was...
Sharon, thank you so much. This immeasurable pain that you're experiencing in Israel, every single one of you, we have to talk about it. We have to hear it. And the only thing we can do is help and raise our voices. We've just heard some witnesses who were part of that massacre, who were in it, and whose relatives were taken hostages. Sharon, our question to you is, you're a politician, and I can imagine that every effort is made to get freedom for and release for those hostages. But what can you do as a politician to ensure the release of those hostages?
Well, we do anything in our capability. And right now, our troops and our soldiers are in Gaza trying to liberate them. This is a very, very difficult situation. We are not at war with the Palestinians, but we are at war with Hamas. Hamas is a terrorist organization. This is ISIS. This is a proxy of Iran. It's an army of Iran. It's an army of radical Islam that have waged war on, not on our territory, but on our values, on the way we live. This is radical Islam against the democracy, against the values of freedom and liberty and equality and freedom of religion and the sanctity of life. That's what they're waging war on. I mean, when they write on their platform that they will not stop until Israel will be completely eliminated, that the Jews in Israel will be completely eliminated, it means that their only goal is for a full genocide of the Jewish people here in Israel. When they are chanting from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free, means it will be free from Jews. And it is really heartbreaking to see those marches and support in those acts of Hamas, in those horrific crimes against humanity. And you see people starting to raise signs like "Gas the Jews," like "Clean the world from Jews." The rise of anti-Semitism, I think, is extremely, extremely worrying at the moment. And this...
So maybe one last question. What would you think? What's important for Christian churches? For you are a co-chair of the Christian Allies Caucus in the Knesset. You're connected to so many churches. What can Christian churches do at this time?
You cannot be silent. You have to raise your voice and speak up. There are people who are marching down the street, calling for the genocide of Jews in Israel, calling for a national intifada, an international intifada, globalizing intifada. What does that mean? It means to murder all the infidels, not just Jews, but Christian alike, anyone who's not a radical Muslim. And this is a fight that we have to fight together. Just yesterday, Paul Wexler, a Jewish man, was beaten to death in Los Angeles by a pro-Palestinian protester. This could easily be my father in Canada. He lives there. In Paris, a woman was attacked because she had a mezuzah on her doorstep, a symbol of Judaism. They went in and violently attacked her. That could easily be my grandmother in Paris. Jews around the world are being attacked. I beg you, do not be silent. Please raise up your voice. Speak out. As always, the Jews, we, Israel, are the front, but this is an international event of radical Islam challenging our values, the way we live, all of us together. The most persecuted minority in the Middle East are Christians. And this is an Iranian orchestrated and planned attack. Their soldiers were trained in Iran, funded. Their weapons are from Iran. Hamas is their army. Hezbollah is their army in the north. They have an army in Syria. They are all attacking us from different locations. But don't forget, don't turn a blind eye. They have their people as well in your streets, in your countries as well. This is a fight we have to fight together on our values against radical Islam and against anti-Semitism and hatred.
Vielen Dank. Vielen Dank.
Wow, thank you so much, Sharon. That is what we are going to do, and we will raise our voices. We will mobilize people. We will take to the streets. And as March of Life will continue doing so worldwide, we will mobilize, whether that is in South America or in Poland, Ukraine, wherever it is. And we want to hear your voice. Thank you so much. Great to hear from you, Sharon. And thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for all your support and your love to our people.
And a big warm hand to Sharon once again. Thank you for being with us, and please take our best wishes and blessings to Jerusalem as well.
Thank you.
Ja, wir haben noch einen zweiten Gast.
And we have another special guest with us, because when we think about Israel and what is going on there right now, we are also seeing an explosion of anti-Semitism worldwide. It's really a global thing, and it's hard to believe what happened. There's a reversal of perpetrators and victims, and I'm so glad to be able to welcome a specialist here. We have here Arthur Mazejan with us, Chief of Staff of the Combat Anti-Semitism movement. That's an organization that is active worldwide, and they are raising their voices and combining different voices against anti-Semitism. And it's so important. They're a partner organization of March of Life. And Arthur, thank you so much for joining us here today.
Was passiert da gerade?
And let me ask you, what is happening on the streets right now? How is it possible that this anti-Semitism is breaking open globally in a measure that we've not seen until now?
Thank you. First, I'd just like to thank March of Life and everyone who has joined today to show solidarity with Israel and Jewish communities around the world. It really warms the heart to see you all standing with us during this time. But as you mentioned, there's really been an explosion in anti-Semitic activity and sentiment around the world since this war began. It's like a volcano, really. And this war, a new front has opened up, and that's here in the diaspora and attacks on Jewish communities around the world. Just to give you an example, in the 48 hours when there was misreporting by the New York Times and other media outlets around the world that Israel had bombed a hospital in Gaza, we saw a synagogue getting firebombed in Germany. We saw synagogues in North Africa and Spain getting attacked, a Jewish school in Miami being threatened, and students on the University of Pennsylvania's campus chanting, "We want a Jewish genocide." So what we're seeing is that what is happening in Israel and in the Middle East is not staying there. And as a fifth generation Jewish American, myself and my peers have never experienced something like this, incidents taking place in every major city in our country. This was something that we were always told happened in the old country and not here. And our synagogues and communal institutions have really become like fortresses in recent days and weeks. There was a Jordanian man in Texas who was arrested for threatening to attack a Jewish institution. An elderly Jewish man was killed in Los Angeles earlier this week, and there have been threats, too many to name, around North America and Europe as well. We feel that in the 80s, the 90s, the early 2000s, when we were growing up, this was a golden age of assimilation and intolerance for us here in the United States. But people feel that this is changing. Young Jewish people in this country feel abandoned largely by having stood in solidarity with other movements that have taken place, whether for women's rights or for African American rights or around issues such as climate change, and people that we thought were our allies have remained largely silent or have inversed the narrative in terms of what's taking place here. And there's really just been too many incidents.
So we do realize and see, especially in the elite universities in America, there are anti-Israeli demonstrations. We hear about threats, hatred against Jews. And this is actually the future elite of America. How can you explain that this kind of anti-Semitism and hatred of Jews has emerged, especially at the universities?
Yeah, this is a big problem on our campuses, and our Jewish students are on the front lines in this fight right now, and especially on our elite universities. At Cornell University, a student was arrested by federal authorities for threatening to murder Jewish students. The FBI is investigating new threats at the University of Pennsylvania. Jewish students were assaulted at Harvard University, one of the most elite universities in the world, really, and at dozens of other campuses around the country and around North America. There's been calls for genocide, calls supporting Hamas and justifying the terrorist attacks on Israel. And so Jewish students are afraid and are staying home and are afraid to show outward expressions of their identity. I think one of the problems is that diversity, equity, and inclusion programs on campus have largely not dealt with the issue of anti-Semitism and not included Jewish students in their programming. And I think that this is something that has to change. There's also a tendency sometimes in the United States to project our own history in terms of things like race relations onto other geopolitical issues around the world. And the Israeli-Palestinian conflict is often viewed through that lens, despite having its own complex history. University leaders, government leaders need to condemn this, need to show zero tolerance for this. Thankfully, the Department of Education has reached out to universities around the country to explain to them that they're at risk of losing federal funding if they don't address anti-Semitism on campus under Title VI of the Civil Rights Act in the United States. But university administrators really have a responsibility here to institute programs to combat anti-Semitism and to show that hate speech and incitement is not going to be allowed on their campuses.
Arthur, da habe ich eine Frage und da würde
Arthur, I've got a question here, and I really would like to go a bit more into detail here. When I was in the States a few years ago, and I spoke about anti-Semitism there, usually people would kind of smile at me. Oh yeah, anti-Semitism, hatred of Jews, that's a German problem, or at least something European. We don't have a problem here in the States, really. But now you say that this is actually connected to a form of racism that has not been worked through. Did I understand that correctly?
Yeah, I think so. I think in many circles, anti-Semitism was not acceptable in polite society and was oftentimes lurking beneath the surface. But before October 7th, in the last couple of years, we've seen a mainstreaming of anti-Semitism. We saw what took place with Kanye West last year and other celebrities making these anti-Semitic comments that reached millions and millions of young people. We see young people being misinformed and sometimes radicalized on social media platforms like TikTok today. And so it's a real problem, and it comes from across the ideological spectrum. What we're seeing now, though, is really the convergence of anti-Zionism with anti-Semitism in the United States, something that many people, tried to deny in the past, but I think that this is undeniable today.
Was würdest du empfehlen, wie wir...
Now, what would you recommend? How should we work against this? So many people represented here from at least 20 different nations who are gathered here, and many of them are battling anti-Semitism in their own nations. So what can we do? What would be your recommendation?
I think the very ethos of March of Life is critically important here, and that's marching and marching for life. I live in Washington, D.C., and last weekend there was a national march on Washington organized by the pro-Palestinian protesters, and there were tens of thousands of people here. And I've never seen anti-Semitism in the streets like that before in my life. Calls of genocide, calls of Hamas flags in the crowd, Israeli leaders being depicted as Adolf Hitler. It was really scary and abhorrent, and we have to respond by marching ourselves and speaking out and showing solidarity. Next week in Washington, D.C., on November 14th, a national March on Washington is being organized with groups from across the United States, with Christian allies, with Jewish communities and others, to show that people support Israel and that they condemn anti-Semitism. Because the people that are doing this, certain members of Congress, they're loud and they make a lot of noise, but I don't believe that they represent the mainstream. And folks like us at the center of society, we really have to speak up now and send a message loud and clear to our leaders across the world.
Vielen Dank. Es ist so wertvoll, kostbar mit euch verbunden.
Thank you so much. It's so valuable to be connected with you as partner organizations. And we want to hear that. marching everywhere in the nations, whether with many or few, just to unite and come together. Many years ago, I said, if we don't occupy the street and take to the streets, others will. And now we see that coming true. And we need to fill a vacuum. We need to be visible and raise our voices. And let's do that together. Thank you so much, Arthur. Please give him a big warm hand and a big thank you as well.
Vielen Dank.
Thank you so much.
Thank
everybody.
you.
Wir möchten einen Tanz sehen.
So now we want to see a dance modeled on Isaiah 25. And this actually speaks about a veil or a shroud of anti-Semitism that covers the nations, but that is torn. And so we have the hope that a veil will be torn. And what we believe is that this veil cannot be torn unless we share our stories, unless we take a look at our anti-Semitism. So let's watch this dance depicting Isaiah 25.
Destroy the shroud that enfolds all peoples, the veil that covers all nations. He will swallow up death forever. Come and see on Mount Zion the God of Abraham is calling all people to Jerusalem.
God of Abraham is calling all people to Jerusalem.
God will destroy the shroud of death that enfolds the people, and from his place he will remove the veil that covers the nations.
Come and see on Mount Zion the God of Abraham is calling all people to Jerusalem.
He will swallow up death in victory. Forever God will reign. He will take away from all the is calling all people to Jerusalem. Come and see the God of Abraham is calling all people to Jerusalem. Come and see on Mount Zion the God of Abraham is calling all people to Jerusalem.
Remove the veil of anti-Semitism as well. This has to happen. And in the beginning I said, in my introduction, we have tried so much having days of remembrance, producing documentations, entire books have been written. And of course we must not stop doing that. But when we see that there is such an explosion of anti-Semitism, we have to wonder, what can we do? What is in our hands? And I believe that there is something that we can actually do. And we call it breaking the veil of silence. And it always starts with us personally. And this is not something that is just typical for us as a German nation. Well, of course, it's also true for our nation, especially because of our past. But it is something that is valid for any nation, everywhere. For 2,000 years, as Christians, we've been carrying anti-Semitism in our own lives. And one of the hallmarks of anti-Semitism and hatred of Jews is the fact that it's contagious and it's passed on from generation to generation to generation. But we can make a stop here. We can call for a stop, first personally in our own lives, when we share our stories. And so that's why we started encouraging people to take a look at their own stories, especially in Germany, stories of our fathers, mothers, grandfathers, grandmothers. Stories of wherever they were involved actively or passively in the Holocaust and never spoke about it. And we discovered that this anti-Semitism is also present in us. As long as we are not willing to speak about the truth, and as long as we are unwilling to rethink our lives and to live differently, and to change from the way that our fathers and mothers lived. The Holocaust was only possible because the silent majority in Germany did not take a stand. And the same thing is true today. Anti-Semitism can only spread if the majority are silent and don't say anything about it. And now is the time to raise our voices. We need to do something now. It always begins with us personally. And I asked a few people to come forward, Markus Demmer, Anna Raga, Anna Suzette Pfeiffer, and Samuel Haas, to briefly share their stories, to let us know how did it happen that anti-Semitism and hatred of Jews were broken and why they stand by Israel. Markus, you could begin. My name is Markus Demmer. I'm 60 years old, and I'm from a family of Nazi criminals. My grandfather was a Nazi criminal, and after the war, well, he was put in court, and in 1939 he was involved in the invasion of Poland, and with all cruelty and brutality, he did the same things like we just heard now from the 7th of October. He acted in Poland, and he simply murdered Jews and Polish people. And when I started thinking about this topic and researching, I actually realized that this same anti-Semitism is alive in me as well. And I only realized that because I started taking a look at the past and not trying to protect it anymore and trying to hide things anymore. And because of that, my own heart was broken. And when I worked through my family past, I now can stand with Israel, and I can take a stand against anti-Semitism, because the atrocities that I have uncovered with my own grandfather, they broke my heart, and now I have a love to Israel in my heart. Thank you so much, Markus Demmer. Anna? My great-grandfather was involved in the 9th of November to burn down the synagogue of Darmstadt, and he was proud of it. He hated Jews with all his heart. And all 4 of my great-grandfathers were devout Nazis. They hated Jews, persecuted them, murdered them. And after that time, there was a great silence in my family. Nobody ever talked about it. But only once my parents started working through the past, and I then started looking at that story as well, only then I realized that also my family was involved. I had heard a lot about the Holocaust in school, but it didn't concern me. I was indifferent. I didn't mean anything to me. But when I heard my own family story and I saw the eyewitness reports about my own great-great-grandfather, it broke my heart. And what I did then was I didn't just leave it at that, but I went to other March of Life events into other nations, Poland, Ukraine, Belarus. I went to the places where my great-grandfathers had been as part of the Wehrmacht. And I started sharing their stories. It's important for us to talk about it, to confess the guilt. I was able to ask forgiveness. I was able to ask forgiveness of Holocaust survivors. This also touched my heart when I stood in front of them and I saw that this pain caused such devastation in them, and my family was involved. And I was able to ask forgiveness, and it brought healing to them. And at the same time, it was so important to raise my voice. And today I want to repeat, I raise my voice against anti-Semitism. Never again is now, and we must raise our voices. Thank you, Anna. Now we've got Anna Suzette here. My family is connected to the Holocaust in a double way. The one thing is passivity, an agreement about the things that happened, but the other side was active involvement. My great-grandfather was a worker in Auschwitz, and for 2 years He saw the suffering of the prisoners, and he helped set up the camp, and he created that platform for hundreds of thousands of prisoners to be murdered. And another great-grandfather volunteered for the SS, and he was deployed in so many countries all over Europe. And with so many soldiers, it was a cold-blooded murdering of civilians, men, women, old people, young people. And that reminds us of the 7th of October this year. And after the war, there was such a denial in my family. It was the complete reversal of victim perpetrators. And even 40 years ago, parts of my family said, oh, well, Israel is much worse. They are the real evildoers. And something like that must not happen again. And when I started researching the topic, it became personal because it was my own family all of a sudden. And as a great-granddaughter, a fourth generation, to me, it's so important about talking the truth of history, to take seriously what happened, and also to bring that message, never again is now. And if not now, when then? Anna said, how old are you? Well, 21. And some people think, wow, at 20 years old, how can you be anti-Semitic? Did you discover that in your own heart? Well, actually, I did. Because anti-Semitism is something that's alive in us. And there is a situation that is rather shocking, but I want to tell it to you to just show the truth of this. You know, I was 2.5, 3 years old. I was hardly able to talk. And out of the nothing, out of the blue, I said, all Jews should die. You know, as a 3-year-old, you don't know what are Jews, what is the Holocaust, you don't know anything about history. How can a 3-year-old say something like that? I personally don't have a memory of that story, but when my parents told me that story later on, I understood how deeply that heritage is rooted within it. And I was so shocked to hear about how I talked, because there was no difference compared to my great-grandparents. And that's why today it's so important to me to raise my voice for the Jewish people today, and not to deny that we have this heritage, but we can and we must do something about it. Wow, that's really cool. It's so important for us to hear. This is not just out of the blue, out of nothing, but there is something that is passed on from generation to generation, and we can break that when we break the veil of silence. Thank you so much, Anna Suzette. And now, Samuel, you're a rap artist, you've got a story. You will perform a song that you've written just recently that speaks into the situation. But maybe you can tell us a little bit about how you came to write the song and what the connection is to your personal story. Well, the song was birthed, of course, out of the recent weeks, what I saw in Israel, what I saw on the news. And this was something that really shook me very deeply, what I'm seeing in Israel, but also in Germany. And anti-Semitism that is heard so loudly on the streets, the paroles, the chants they have. And it reminds me so much of the Nazi era and the anti-Semitism that was voiced back then. And the song is called Not Alone Anymore. And first of all, it's a call to us to make a statement towards Israel and to let Israel know you are not alone anymore. I stand with you. And at the same time, it's a call to us not to be silent, but to raise our voices. And it's really special that you can perform the song because you used to be an anti-Semit yourself. Well, that's true. I don't know how long ago exactly, but about 10 or 11 years ago, I wrote rap songs that were filled with anti-Semitism. I used the terms Jew or Jewish pig as curses, and I wrote songs in a brutality that we hear on the news today, and I put them into words. To me, it was normal to greet my friends with a Hitler salute. And I was filled with prejudices against Jews, even though I didn't know any Jews myself. And this was alive in me, this hatred, these prejudices. And this anti-Semitism was alive in my heart. And in the process, when I became a Christian, my parents actually started telling me the story of my great-grandparents and how they had been Nazis and part of the Wehrmacht and part of the Holocaust. And I found one example. One of my great-grandfathers was part of the Russian campaign. It's just outside of Moscow. And just after the war, people discovered a mass grave there with corpses that were mutilated. The ears were cut off, their limbs were cut off, their genitals were cut off. That wasn't just war, but it was the same brutality that we hear about again today, that we can hardly believe, that we can't voice. And that's why this concerns me so much, because it was my own great-grandfather. My family did these pogroms to Jews in Europe, and now the same happens again. And this never again is now, and we need to raise our voices now, and that's why I'm standing with Israel. So we are looking forward to hearing your performance.
Und ich frage mich, wie können wir glaubhaft an der Seite Israels und der Angehörigen der Opfer stehen, wenn nach dem brutalen Angriff der Hamas die Gleichgültigkeit...
And I ask myself how we can credibly stand by Israel and the relatives of the victims when after the brutal attack by Hamas, the indifference and silence of anti-Semitism and hatred of Jews can once again be heard booming out loudly in our country.
Eigentlich noch wert? Was haben wir aus dem Dritten Reich für uns gelernt? Hass auf Juden ist in Deutschland weiter populär. Ich muss dir sagen, mein Freund, dass ein Like nicht reicht, wenn du in der Kommentarspalte leise bleibst. Eine Sache, die uns die damalige Zeit beweist. Es passiert wieder, wenn du jetzt weiter schweigst. Deutschland, dein Nie wieder ist im Floskelcheck. Jetzt muss ich zeigen, was hinter den schönen Worten steckt. Wenn du die Bosheit des Terrors nicht glauben kannst, dann weil das Opfernarrativ dich verzaubert hat. Hamas will, dass es eine judenfreie Landkarte gibt, doch mit Terroristen verhandeln wir nicht. Sie rufen Jude, Jude, komm heraus und kämpf allein. Aber Bruder, wir sind jetzt zu zweit. Du bist nicht allein, nicht allein. Dieses Land ist für immer dein, immer dein. Ich kämpfe für deine Sicherheit, Sicherheit. Und Gott wird dir Richter sein, Richter sein. Glaub mir, du bist nicht allein, nicht allein. Dieses Land ist für immer dein, immer dein. Ich kämpfe für deine Sicherheit, Sicherheit. Und Gott wird dir Richter sein, Richter sein. Israel, es ist ein Wunder, dieses Land. Wir stehen zu dir und wir haben gesagt, wir hätten damals gern den Unterschied gemacht. Doch heute haben wir unsere Zukunft in der Hand. Und in dieser Zeit zahlen wir nun einen Preis. Für jahrelang naive Gutgläubigkeit. Der Zeitgeist hat seine eigene Ideologie. Eine bunt angemalte Pazifismus-Utopie. Ich bete, dass Gott das Bekenntnis der Kirche erweckt, die sich nicht hinter diplomatischen Motiven versteckt. Denn die Freundschaft beweist sich in der Krise als echt. Ich stehe auf und sag, nie wieder ist jetzt. Nie wieder ist jetzt. Wo sind die Stimmen der Gerechtigkeit, wenn das Blut jüdischer Kinder zum Himmel schreit? Ich weiß, wo ich stehe, wenn der Hass sie wieder vereint. Es ist sicher nicht das letzte Lied, das ich schreibe. Du bist nicht allein, nicht allein. Dieses Land ist für immer dein, immer dein. Ich kämpfe für deine Sicherheit, Sicherheit. Und Gott wird dir Richter sein, Richter sein. Glaub mir, du bist nicht allein, nicht allein. Dieses Land ist für immer dein, immer dein. Ich kämpfe für deine Sicherheit, Sicherheit. Und Gott wird dir Richter sein, Richter sein. Du bist nicht allein, dieses Land ist für immer dein. Ich kämpfe für deine Sicherheit und Gott wird dir Richter sein. Glaub mir, du bist nicht allein, dieses Land ist für immer dein. Ich kämpfe für deine Sicherheit und Gott wird ihr Richter sein.
Thank you so much, Samuel Haas.
Und die Frage ist, was
And the question is, what can we do? Well, that is so key, and we would like to talk briefly to our March of Life directors. Maybe we can show them on the screen. We have them with us from 20 different nations. And I would like to talk to some of them. Well, I'd love to talk to all of you, but due to time reason I can't. But 3 of you, I would like to talk to you to share where you are active. And first of all, Dorothy is a director in Germany. And Dorothy, maybe you can share a little bit about what we've experienced and where we've been to the streets and what the effects are in Germany. Well, I'd be happy to do that. And first of all, I would like to say thank you so much for this powerful event and your moving presentations. It's so encouraging for many of the organizers in Germany. And we are so glad for all the different vigils we had in Germany, Tübingen, Annaberg, Flensburg, Freiburg, in Griesheim. Tomorrow it will be in Ueckermünde, Mainz, Leipzig. Sometimes there were counter demonstrations in the cities, but it was very powerful events that were a message for us. And we are so grateful that we were able to encourage our Jewish friends with the videos and how these videos are shared, and we will raise our voices with that. Thank you so much, Dorothy. And this is our call to take to the streets, and I would like to go over to Poland now. And Edward, you have also taken to the streets to Warsaw, maybe? Maybe you can share a little bit how you raise your voices in Poland for Israel at this time.
Wszystkich serdecznie. Pierwsza rzecz, jaką zrobiliśmy, to wydaliśmy oświadczenie popierające Izrael i puściliśmy to w media społecznościowe, żeby jak najwięcej ludzi mogło...
I am sorry, I can't hear the translation.
Spływają, wręczyliśmy to potem przedstawicielowi ambasady Izraela w Polsce w czasie takiego wiecu poparcia, który był 22 października.
On the 22nd of October, we had a big demonstration for Israel. Michael Schudrich was with us, the chief rabbi, and people came to be with us despite rain. And we were able to show our hearts to Israel. And we were able to speak and say, Israel, you're not alone, and stand with them. And many times we also meet on Zoom, and we encourage everyone to be active in social media and to speak the truth about what is happening in Israel. But unfortunately, in Poland, there are also large pro-Palestinian demonstrations. Even on the very day that we had our own demonstration, there was one lady coming from Israel with her daughter, and one day earlier they came across the Palestinian demonstration, and now they had our demonstration, and they were so moved that they wept. And to us, it was so important because it showed us how important, if it's just for one or two people, to take to the streets and to raise our voices and stand with Israel. And like today, via Zoom, we were able to share testimony by members of their families, family members of the hostages. And on that Zoom meeting, there were more than 250 people who joined us. And that was a very important experience to stand with them. And tomorrow we'll go to Wrocław. And there we will also remember the fact that the Kristallnacht took place. And this will also be a march of support for Israel. And together we'll stand for Israel today, not just to remember the past, but to talk about what's happening today. So we love Israel, and we will always take a stand for Israel on the streets. And so it is great to be able to fill the streets in South America and to stand. And now it's over to Ruben Gutknecht. And he's director of March of Life in South America. And you have called thousands of people to the street. And maybe we can hear from you here. Well, it's very special to be with you here today because people in South America might think, oh, well, what problem of ours is the Holocaust? But on the 7th of October, we really see that, how it concerns everyone. There were demonstrations in all of the capital cities, also in South America. Some of us were here in demonstrations for Israel with 500 people or 5,000 people. For instance, in Colombia, they had a demonstration in the night of the 7th to the 8th of November, where the Israeli embassy was defaced with swastika. And now people went there the following day to clean the Israeli embassy. And a day later, it was defaced again, and they went again to clean it. And so it's really visible how more and more churches, but also Jewish groups actually join in. For us in South America, that's new, because up to now, as Christians, we took to the streets in South America, but it wasn't so easy for the Jewish communities to come with us. But since the massacre of the 7th of October, many of the Jewish communities have come out with us. Doesn't matter where we look. For instance, in Paraguay, they had an event that was mainly organized by the Jewish communities just outside Parliament. And here in Lima, we had a big event with more than 500 people, with mainly the Jewish community involved. And they supported March of Life with everything they had. And so on the one hand, we see something waking up in the churches here. And it really spoke to me what Job said, and what also many other speakers said, that many times in the churches, there's just no sense how much anti-Semitism is still alive in us. Because here in South America, we need to understand that Martin Luther is the most important person there is for an evangelical person or Protestant person. But the fact that he also brings a lot of anti-Semitism is something that they're not aware of. But what we do see is that very slowly the churches start taking to the streets after all of the marches we organized. But also we see the pro-Palestinian demonstrations. Just here in Lima alone, we had 5 different pro-Palestine events. They were very small, that wasn't a big thing. But in the social media and also in the news, actually people really focus on that. And they proclaim free Palestine and whatnot. And so it's all the more important to raise our voices here right now, wherever we are. There were marches and events in Argentina, in Jujuy, in the north of Argentina, Buenos Aires, but also in Ecuador, in Bolivia, in almost all of the South American nations. In the Dominican Republic, we had more than 2,000 people on the street who prayed together for Israel and for the victims, but also mainly for the hostages as well. So we see things in motion everywhere. We stand with Israel. And we promised that every fortnight, or at least every 20 days, we'd have an event of some form in order not to be silent until all the hostages are back and until the whole thing takes a different turn. Wow, Ruben, thank you. It's so encouraging to see you take to the street. And you have to know, in Colombia, the president is openly anti-Semitic. He speaks out against Israel. He wants to break off diplomatic relations. And in the Dominican Republic, the president also speaks against Israel. And yet they take to the streets. So that's so important. Please share that with all the South American directors. It is so special that you do that. And at the same time, it's so important not to stop. So, Jobs, let's talk about this. What can we do? How can we be active? Well, we actually came up with a very practical program for you with 5 points. And I think every one of you can pick their own favorite here. So the first one is a call to action. Raise your voice for Israel right now, wherever you are, whether that is on social media, in your jobs. So don't wait for your church to organize a demonstration, but don't be silent. Every one of you we can raise our voices, and let's encourage you. You can write letters to the editor. You can do anything you want, but be involved. It's no longer the time just to wait and see, but it's the time to do something. And you don't have to be a specialist for the Middle East questions. Just raise your voices. Well, of course, it's good to get knowledge. There's lots of good material where you can get educated, but the important thing is open your mouth in your family, in your school, at your university, wherever you are. Make a visible statement that you support Israel. That's so important. Don't hide. And secondly, keep taking to the streets again and again for Israel and for the release of the hostages. So go to demonstrations and vigils, but with the March of Life here, we are people who become active ourselves. If we had interviewed the other people, we see this worldwide. This year alone, we had 80 marches of life, and through this situation, there are many more. But take to the streets, join other events, but organize a vigil yourself. It's not difficult. You can print the poster. We have soundtracks of the names that are read. We've got speeches that you can hold. Of course, it's good to coordinate with the police, I would recommend taking care of security here, but it's important. Do that. Take to the streets. Be public. Organize a vigil. Let's keep doing that. And let's not leave the streets to the enemies of Israel and the haters. And that takes us to point number 3. It's just one glowing ember dies down, but if you get them together, many glowing embers will cause a fire. So it's time not to remain alone, but be connected, be networking. And many people feel very much alone in their struggle against anti-Semitism as pastors or leaders or network leaders. But if you feel like that, we want to invite you, join us for the March of Life conference. That's an excellent opportunity to hear from each other, to be encouraged. That's from the 9th of February to the 11th of February, 2024. There's networking, encouragement, teaching, practical things we can do, what to do. So I will be there. Will you be there too? Well, I'm quite sure I'll be there. So that will take place here in Tübingen. And we want to invite you, join us. And of course, it's international. There'll be many languages, lots of translation there. And it's also mishpacha. Don't forget, we come together. We have Aryeh Shaul-Shalikar, the former Speaker of the Army. We have invited them and many other guests. So be here, make plans. And point number 4, and that's to everyone who's part of the March of Life network. Please plan your next March of Life in your city around Yom HaShoah in April, May 2024. Our vision is to take 6 million people to the street around the time of Yom HaShoah. At the moment, we have several tens of thousands, but there is lots of space to grow, as you say. So plan it for your city. Plan your march. Our vision is to have every city, every nation, every year around Yom HaShoah, a March of Life. And if we've not understood that up to now we do understand. Our voice counts on the street, not just in times of crisis like now, but as something constant, perpetual, going on and on. So if you're an organizer, please plan for that. If you're not an organizer yet, you can go to our website and register and become an organizer. We want to invite you to do that, and we'll give you material on how to do it. But please plan your march now. Yom HaShoah is on the 6th of May. So the 5th of May is the Erev Yom HaShoah, but also the 2 weeks before and after. Use that time, and maybe you can break out of your box, not just one march. Think about how to release 5 marches, 10 marches. We've got someone who's interested in South Korea, so things might change very quickly there with the church growth they have. So we believe for 6 million people on the streets, but every single one counts. So that's really, really important. Whether you have a march with 5 people or 500 or 5,000. And that takes us to point number 5, because all of this is so much more than just a demonstration. You know, we believe that the very means and answer for this explosion, this anti-Semitic explosion worldwide, the answer is for us to break the veil of silence. And I believe the Lord has given us an instrument globally for every nation. And that's why I asked, isn't it interesting that the very reason in America is seen in the fact that racism hasn't been worked through, and there's a transmission from generation to generation also of anti-Semitism. So in every nation they have a veil of silence that needs to be broken. So first of all, I can recommend a book to you. Actually, it's been written 12 years ago, but it's an amazing book. Even today, people keep asking me, it doesn't matter what event I'm on, people come from France, for instance, or other nations, America maybe, and they say something happened in my family by just reading this book. So the book about breaking the veil of silence, right? It's important. And secondly, we have Breaking the Veil of Silence seminars online, so do register. If you see there is still room for growth, you can still do something. We have a Breaking the Veil of Silence seminar in January. You can go to breakingtheveilofsilence.com. Next weekend, we have a seminar here for German-speaking nations. Unfortunately, you can't register for that anymore. But next year we'll have another one. And also something really important. Everyone who's listening, pastors, church leaders, we can make a change, you know. We can make a change in the fact that we are ignorant in our churches. We just think, oh, some people do that, but we won't as pastors. But actually, in the Ukraine, I've seen leaders and pastors there getting certified, and they bring the message into the Ukraine, and we see a change just by simply breaking the veil of silence, by repenting of anti-Semitism, hatred of Jews in our nation. And therefore, we want to invite you, if you're a pastor, a church leader, a multiplier, come and join us for the Zoom conference on the 22nd of November. In every nation, we want to hold Breaking the Veil of Silence seminars. And in that Zoom conference, 22nd of November, 6 p.m., we want to talk about how to make it practical. So if you're interested, we want to invite you. Think about it. How can we multiply this? And I believe it will have results. Wow, that was a lot of information now. We would love to send that to you. And for that, you probably best register here now. So here's our newsletter. You can register. If you register here, are we seeing that? I'm not seeing this. Here we go. In German and in English, there are our newsletters available. And you go to the link or scan the QR code, and then we will send you all the information, the dates, background information. You can register for the Zoom conference for church leaders, and you get material that we give you to be active. So register now for the newsletter. So you get the information and we can send it to you. That's really, really valuable. It's absolutely valuable, of course. And it's really worth it, spending a good dime on it. And actually, that's what we're going to do now. Call for donations. We give you 2 opportunities to donate. Both of the projects here are for March of Life. We started a project for victims of the terror attack together with Karen Hayesot. Last week we were able to transfer 40,000 euros for them. That's really great. And you can also support March of Life in general. And depending on what purpose you give your donation for, you can determine where the money will go to. And so you've got different possibilities. You can either scan the QR code or go to marchoflife.org donate. And there are different possibilities for you to donate via PayPal, credit card, or bank draft or transfer. And you can also give in cash if you're here live in person, or you can pick up a pledge sheet that's in the seat pocket in front of you. And there you also have various possibilities to donate. You can just complete the slip and pay later on if you want to. And if you're here with us live, you can also register for our publications. And let's take a few minutes time for you to prepare, and then we will end this event. So we would like to encourage you to give a good donation, because that's the only way how the message and March of Life can keep spreading. And at the same time, we also want to support the victims of terror. And we thank you very much for your support in this. And we will see YC dance in a moment. And then we will say goodbye officially, because this dance is really worth it. But now, how will we proceed? Well, we point out one more time that the songs we released today, so the song with a prayer for the hostages to return home, Shuva Adonai, but also Samuel Haas's song will be available very soon on the March of Life channel. And I also would like to invite you to subscribe to the YouTube channel of March of Life so you can stay updated with what's happening here. Just subscribe. That's an encouragement for us, so we know we reach more people, but it's also important for you so you can get all the updates go to our website. It contains more information about us and also material how we can be active. And of course, you can visit our website and at the same time write to us. If you are joining us, let us hear from you what the effects were in your own life maybe. Give testimony. We look forward to hearing from you. And the ushers will go around and pick up the donations. You can put in either your cash or the pledge sheets. And after we clear away the tables here, we'll see this special dance by YC Dance, Hallelujah.
Hallelujah, birkia uzo, hallelujah, bigvuota, hallelujah, kerov godlo, hallelujah, betek hashofar, hallelujah, benevel vekino. Kol haneshama te'alelia, hallelujah, hallelujah. Hallelujah, beminim ve'ugav, hallelujah, betziltzeli shama, hallelujah, betziltzeli Torah. Kol haneshama te'alelia, hallelujah, hallelujah. Kol haneshama te'alelia, hallelujah, hallelujah. Kol haneshama te'alelia, hallelujah, hallelujah. Te'alelia, hallelujah, hallelujah.
So, das war YC Dance mit Hallelujah.
So this was YC Dance with Hallelujah. We are at the end of our event here. And I would like to say thank you so much for all our speakers who are with us live. Tirza Livni, Natalie and Arthur, thank you so much for joining us. And also Sharon Haskell. And also thank you for all of you directors who are with us. Maybe we can show them one more time on the screen, the different nations. Thank you for making this statement that together we stand by the side of Israel from the different nations. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. It was a true privilege to be with you. Wave at us. It's great to see you. Wonderful to have you with us. Blessings to all of you. And we stand together, we raise our voices, never again is now. Thank you also to everyone who helped doing the technical support and making this possible. Thank you for doing a tremendous job here. A big hand. Thank you for everyone who worked here, all dancers, musicians. And thank you to everyone who was with us on YouTube. Be blessed. No matter where you're watching from, never again is now. See you then. Take care and bye-bye.
ואני בחסדך בטחתי, יגל ליבי בישועתך. ואני בחסדך בטחתי, יגל ליבי בישועתך. אשיר על השם, אשיר על השם, אשיר על השם, כי גמל עליי. אשיר על השם, אשיר על השם, אשיר על השם, כי גמל עליי. אשיר על השם, אשיר על השם, אשיר על השם. אשיר על השם, כי גמל עליי. אשיר על השם, אשיר על השם, אשיר על השם, כי גמל עליי. אשיר על השם, אשיר על השם, אשיר על השם, כי גמל עליי. מכל החסדים ומכל האמת אשר עשית את עבדך. קטונתי מכל החסדים ומכל האמת אשר עשית את עבדך. קטונתי מכל החסדים ומכל האמת הצילני נא, הצילני נא, הצילני נא. כי במקלי עברתי את הירדן, אתה הייתי לשני מחנות, הצילני